Hi, my name's Phil, and today I'm going to show you how to emulate the tube sag sound of a cranked guitar amplifier at any volume by using a compressor in your effects loop. Let's start with a demo. You should have heard that with the compressor on, you get a more aggressive pick attack as well as a kind of swirling effect in the sustained chords. So let's talk about what tube sag actually is. You've got your guitar, and that puts out a signal that looks more or less like this when you pluck a string. That goes into your preamplifier. We're talking about high gain signals here. When the signal comes out of there, it looks like this. It's saturated. This feeds into a power amp, which then drives your guitar speaker. The power amp is fed by a power supply with an output voltage, which we'll call Vs. The power amp can only output a signal as large as Vs. So if Vs were higher or lower, the maximum output signal from the speaker would be higher or lower. And that's exactly where tube sag comes in. The power supply output curve looks like this. For the amount of current that it draws, the output voltage, Vs, looks like this. The power amp, when it's putting out more sound, it draws more current from the power supply. So at lower volumes, the voltage doesn't really change. But at higher volumes, it draws more and more current, and the output voltage drops, which means when you turn up your amplifier higher, the maximum voltage actually starts to drop. But there's a catch, because the power supply has some gigantic capacitors. Those charge up to Vs. As the current is drawn, that charge can deplete, which means there's a transient here. Let's talk about this. So here's your input signal from your guitar. Your preamp outputs a signal that looks like this. This hits your power amp, and we've got this power amp cranked up. So let's look at our Vs. It starts out at maximum voltage, but as soon as that transient hits, it drops. And it doesn't drop immediately, it drops gradually because there's capacitors and they take a little time to discharge. When the signal goes away, those capacitors charge back up. And then the note hits again, Vs comes down, and then it goes away, comes back up. So let's look at our output signal then. Here's the silence in the beginning. Here's your output volume of your output signal. What this means basically is that you have this initial volume spike right on the pick attack. And then while the note is sustained, the volume is ducked a little bit here. You get a little bit of a spike at the beginning, and that's where that punch from tube sag comes from. Let's expand this out a little bit because there's a couple of terms that we're going to need when we talk about dialing it in. This is the preamp out, so the input to the power amp. And then this is the tube amp Vs, max output. Here's our preamp input, all right. And then here is our tube amp output. Now, the amount of time between here, the start of the attack, and here, right where we hit maximum compression, that is called the attack time. And lo and behold, this is exactly what a compressor in the effects loop does. Because basically the signal coming out of your preamp, when it hits your compressor, the compressor will start ducking its gain, so we can achieve the same thing using a compressor as we can cranking up a tube amp to maximum volume. Pretty cool, huh? So let's talk about dialing this in. This Behringer compressor limiter has 3 knobs, one for controlling attack time, one for sustain, and one for output level. The attack time is the amount of time between when the transient appears on the input and when full compression or gain reduction has been achieved. The The sustain knob controls input gain, and then the compression ratio of this pedal is fixed. On other pedals, the sustain knob might control that compression ratio. The attack time I like to set a little bit further than half. It's probably 60 milliseconds. You can set it all the way up if you want. It's going to depend on what you're playing. It's going to depend on exactly what you want to achieve. Shorter attack time means smaller pick attacks when you get them, so they're going to be a little less pronounced when they do happen. Play around with that one. Sustain, you can basically treat that like you would your master volume if this were a big tube amp that we had cranked all the way up. Let's sweep the sustain knob. Do you hear how, as I got up to the maximum, those palm muting chugs had that compression kind of whoa after them? That's pretty cool.
Thanks for watching.